Okay. Okay. All right. People are still trickling in. So starting with the most voted question, which it's such an individual thing that I'm not sure I'll be able to do good justice to it, but I will try. So the question that got the most votes in our survey, almost 80%, was time management. And I'm just putting this here for our reference. There's nothing important going on in the slides, and we won't keep them on, except for us to go back and see what we have covered, what we are about to cover next. So talking about time management. Okay. Time management, of course, one size is not going to fit all. Your health, your resources, the demands of your life, the demands from your work, and your own timeline for interviewing is going to affect the advice or the coaching I would have for you in terms of time management. Does that make sense? Because it's going to be different for everybody. If someone has been laid off and they are on a visa situation and they have an interview in 2 weeks, that would be a very emergency sort of a plan for interviewing, prioritizing, different things. I will always prioritize the mindset heavily, but if you're interviewing in 2 weeks, I would prioritize the life out of the mindset because it's going to make a pretty massive difference, regardless of how much time you have, but especially if you have not a lot of time before you must interview aggressively and land some sort of a position for your visa situation. So time management, if you have particular questions about time management, how much time to devote, the only thing I would say is that when it comes to figuring out how to manage your time well, one of the big sort of obstacles that I've seen people run into is their own relationship to the plan that they're making. And we will talk about what a good plan might look like. But once you have the plan, then to create a schedule using which you can execute the plan. Often the relationship with the plan is that this is very important. I'm ordering myself to go do this. And that is oftentimes not very cognizant of how the nervous system operates. So that's one thing I would say. If you are making a timeline, if you are figuring out what are the best time management strategies for me, and some of those will be sprinkled through the answers to the rest of the questions. But I would say the most important thing is be on your own side. Sometimes in the name of time management, we start to run ourselves without patience and understanding and kindness. And I don't mean that, we should all be nice to ourselves, but I mean that in a very scientific way. It's very counterproductive to take that approach. So when you are wondering about time management, take a scientist's view of things, do an audit of your days to see where most of the time is going, do an audit of your energy to see what sort of tasks take what sort of focus from you and what times of the day are you doing them, so you can create some alignment and do the most intensive tasks at the times where you have the most mental energy, and then account for your physical energy. The constantly asking the question, am I resourced enough to do this, is something I recommend very highly. Drawing the focus back to having respect and understanding for ourselves. Am I resourced enough to do this? And then you can employ whatever your favorite time management strategy is. But I want there to be utmost respect for you and what your life demands of you on a day-to-day basis. You have to make a plan that can sustain you throughout the preparation. You cannot make a plan that does not take into account how much sleep you're getting, That does not take into account how much movement you're getting to do. Movement really breaks stress. It is really important in energy management. So do not casually just throw those things out. Okay. And if life demands a lot of you and you have only a month to prepare, then that's the time to really resource yourself better. That's the time to count on any and all support in your community. If you can get childcare help, if you can get help with meals, you have to show that respect to yourself. Say, how can I best resource myself to do this? Okay, that's all I would say. The rest of the time management is extremely specific to the individual and their situation. So in that sense, consult a friend or work with a coach to help you make a plan that's actually respectful to how it is to be you through the days. Okay, that's all I will say on it. And if you have any follow-up questions, please keep adding them to the chat window. I'll try to do a good job of monitoring it as we go. The next question that got the most votes, and the one that we will devote a lot of time to, is the right way to work on algorithms questions, right? The how. And to some extent, this can also be applied to system design questions, but not in every aspect. But I'll try to present it in a way that's hopefully foundational enough that you can apply it to your system design preparation as well, which we won't cover in too much detail today. So what is the right way to work on questions? Of course, pick a good set of problems covering the basic topics. This is a good time to share with each other. If you have your favorite resource of or if you have your own list of questions, please feel free to share with the rest of the group. But a general rule of thumb is pick some easy questions, some medium difficult questions, and some hard questions from every topic, ranging from arrays, recursion, sorting, searching, dynamic programming, strings, trees, graphs, right? There is not, 15 topics. Whichever way you slice it, you'll come up with either 8 topics or 10 topics. And if you have no starting point for this, please get in touch with me. I'll try to send you some resources. It's important to not constantly be consulting online repositories of what are good questions. That can be really distracting. So in the beginning, I want you to limit your scope a little bit. Maybe 50 to 75 questions, even less if you're giving yourself more time. If you have 3 to 6 months to prepare, I would start with 25 to 30 questions. That's all together, including all the topics. 1 easy, 2 medium, 1 hard, something like that. And if there's a particular topic that's challenging for you, you can maybe choose more problems for that. So that's the first rule of thumb. The second thing is to go breadth first over questions. I don't recommend too much of, I'm going to spend 2 weeks really looking into sorting. Unless you have 6 to 9 months, then you can do that. But otherwise, it's really good to start training your brain from the very beginning to switch between topics, as you will have to when you're interviewing. You won't, not just switching between algorithms topics. There might be questions that touch on 2 algorithms topics, switching between different algorithms and system design and behavioral. So it's good to start training your brain for that from the very beginning. Okay. And once you have a good set of questions, and before we jump into how to work on those problems, I want to take a moment and ask you guys a question, which is, before we look at the plan, let's examine our relationship to the plan. If you imagine a preparation plan, let's say that you have a great plan. I have these 75 questions. I have a schedule of how to work on them. whether to look up a solution or not, whether to, code every single time or not. Am I working on the right? Before, as you imagine yourself doing this plan, my question to you is, how do you feel if you play that movie? Fast forward of that movie. You play that 1 minute movie in your head where you're imagining yourself going through this preparation in the coming month or months. Hopefully not weeks for any of you, but how does that feel? If I gave you a bunch of options, do you feel like, oh, I'm doing this plan and I'm feeling so proud of myself, I'm feeling elated, my heart is swelling with pride? Or are you feeling clenched with worry and insecurity? Are you feeling good about yourself? Are you feeling good in yourself? Are you feeling anxious, tense? What comes up when you imagine yourself going through your preparation plan? So 2 questions. Let me bring the slides back up. These are hard, the whiteboard. So we have 2 questions for you. One is, so as you imagine going through the plan that you made, the steps of the plan, whether it's sitting down with an algorithms problem or system design, whatever big plan that you made for the few months of preparation, how do you feel when you imagine it? So what we are doing is we are trying to examine our relationship to interview preparation before we jump into the technicalities of what should I work on? How should I work on it? We're taking a further step back from that and saying, how do I relate to this whole thing? Okay. How do you feel? So here's some options that I offered. Clenched. Do you feel a lot of pride? Do you feel excitement, anxiety, insecurity, a sense of burden? How are we feeling? So this is when you can unmute and share if you feel comfortable sharing, or you can just share in the chat window. Good about yourself or good in yourself. Slightly different things, and kind of crucial, that difference about feeling good about ourselves versus feeling good in ourselves. And the second question is, do you think answering or even asking question 1 matters? So we have some answers coming in, some excitement and a bit of burden, mostly good feelings. So we have excitement, burden, anything else? Curiosity. Some anxiety, which is understandable, especially if you have a life where you're on a day-to-day basis, your life demands a lot of things from you, whether it's on the family front or it's on the work front. Initial excitement, but then later the burden or tension, which really hinders my preparation. So we're going to say excitement sometimes turning into burden later. I'm going to give you guys another minute to imagine yourself going through an interview preparation plan. Too comfortable with how I feel at present. Too comfortable. That's so interesting. The addition of that too. That's the key word there, isn't it? Comfortable with how I feel at present. Too comfortable. It's like I'm too comfortable to be perturbed by this. That's really good. That's a really good state to make a plan. If you're feeling very comfortable, then make a gentle plan. Make something that can get you started if interview preparation is something on the horizon for you. This is a good time to show yourself that movie. And maybe our nervous system says, yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do that at some point. And you might think, why would I spend time imagining something that I'm not even starting right away? It matters a great deal. You're planting the seed into your nervous system that this whole preparation thing is not a predator. It's not dangerous. Look at me imagining it, thinking about it. Fear, not feeling completely ready to start scheduling interviews even after the preparation. Abhi, let's hang on to that question and make sure that, remind me towards the end that we do go over the readiness aspect of it. That's a good question. Let me go over to see if I missed something. I like what Karthik said. Sometimes I abort after the first month. The frustrations can get to us. Sometimes we feel like, and that's okay. We have to allow that. Okay. +1 to readiness, +1 to fear, anxiety. Okay. So a range of feelings. And they belong. The first thing I would say is that to examine those feelings and say, okay, they belong, and look under that hood a little bit. Where is that anxiety? What is the source of that anxiety? And you will find that the source of the anxiety, fear of rejection, is extremely legitimate. We are social beings before we are problem solvers. Math is what? Relatively recent, right? We are using a brain that's evolved to survive. And, for survival in the face of predators and then survival as a society, we're very good at that. We haven't evolved completely to be natural problem solvers. So we have to work with especially when it's combined with our worth, right? It's one thing to solve a problem for the fun of it, but when you feel like exactly what Sunil said, when you feel like you have to prove yourself and you feel like you're being tested, then it's worth it to take some time to unhook those, unlink your worth from the outcome of an interview process. And that's a skill. It's not a character trait that, oh, my worth is just always linked to how people respond to me or my work. It might have been the case, that might be a strong conditioning, both from evolution and sometimes from our, if we grew up through the regular school system, it teaches us a little bit that our worth is kind of related to that report card, even though nobody has to say that to us specifically, but that can happen, right? So notice what comes up when you imagine yourself going through the plan. And before you start executing the plan, it's worth it to devote a day or two or a week if you can afford it, given your timeline, to work on that relationship between you and the plan. Because that relationship is going to play a humongous role in how this experience goes for you, how you maintain your energy throughout, how effective you are able to be in your preparation. Meaning, by effective, I mean what the impact of your effort. How can you get most out of the hours that you are about to put into the preparation? If you want to get the most out of them, it's important to establish this relationship in a healthy state. Do you guys think, or in this moment, do you feel that answering this question matters? It's not natural to us. It's difficult to be extremely, go all pistons firing into a process if the relationship between us and the plan is a little tense. And usually it's a lot more than a little tense. So I want you to work on that. If you're in the process of interviewing, take a day, take a few hours, and really examine, how am I relating to this plan? And if the plan goes well, if I'm able to execute it in the way that I'm planning, will I feel good in myself, or will I feel good about myself? Are we giving ourselves some external validation, or are we actually feeling good? Not feeling good, but we actually enjoy the parts of it that are enjoyable, right? Very often we will go at the end of the week, and when I work with people one-on-one who are preparing for interviews, sometimes they will say, well, I did have a good week. At least I cannot tell you how many times the sentence starts with at least. At least I did work on 5 problems. And that at least is an indication of that, okay, I'll give myself a good grade. Not bad. And it sounds like we're being supportive of ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with it. But what I'm talking about is that, can we train our brain to enjoy this thing? If you really like that you took some time, if you were able to make some time in your busy life to work on the preparation, and appreciating that about yourself and having that sort of pat on your back as you are working on the plan, is going to have a major effect on your energy. So both appreciating and looking at that relationship continuously. Very often when I'm working on something difficult, something that I haven't done before, I will start off with setting a good relationship between me and the plan to do it. And then I realize 3 weeks into it, the relationship has gone back to what it has been in the past, where I'm doing something difficult. I'm judging myself that I didn't do the Monday plan, feeling a little bit down on myself. So you might have to do more regular check-ins with yourself about the relationship to the plan, if you are like me in this context. Especially if I'm writing something, it might come up. If we're doing an interviewing, it is special in that sense, because we really do feel like, why do I have to do this? Why? I'm a good engineer. I'm going to be a good asset to this team. And why do I have to take this exam? Right? And Karthik, that's a good point. That for some people, it comes more naturally to have a good relationship to the plan, because if we have attempted a lot of tricky, difficult things in a very positive way throughout our life, then we've probably gotten good at it. And that's really great. But the point I want to make it is that it's a skill, it's not a character trait. It's not like some people are like that and some people are not like that. Some people have had the opportunity to develop those skills, and some people have been developing other skills, and we need to work on this skill at this point of time, and that's fine. Let's see, there's another question. Why relationship with the plan and not the goal per se? They're quite related, Naveen, but the relationship to the goal is also important. That's a deeper question. So the point that Naveen is making is that, why relationship to the plan but not to the goal? Both are important. Relationship to the goal is a little bit outside the scope, but if we have time, we can talk about it at the end, which is, why are you looking to change jobs? Why are you interviewing in the first place? Again, is this coming from a place of proving yourself? Is this coming from a place of something you want? Sometimes we want to whip ourselves in shape and get ourselves to do difficult things. So we think if we pretend that this is life and death, we'll probably work really hard to get it done. It's always counterproductive in intellectual pursuits. It seems a little counterintuitive that if our worth is threatened based on how this plan goes, we tend to act in ways that are not the most conducive to success. When our when we feel like my worth as a human being, it hangs on how this interviewing process will go, that is counterproductive in a neuroscientific way. And you guys have probably attended some of my workshops before, have worked with me. So you probably have heard me talk about survival state versus thinking state. Survival state is when our limbic system is activated and we feel like we are under threat, where we feel like the problem that we are working on is a bit of an obstacle. There's a bit of a fight between us and the problem. We want to conquer it. It scares us a little bit. We are worrying how we will do. That's survival state. Thinking state is where you treat the problem almost as a visitor or a member of your extended family. You're spending some time with it. You can dance with the problem and not fight with it. I like the analogy of member of the family because we are very social beings. And so you can trick your brain into that this is a new thing we're getting to know. And you've done this a lot of times before. We get to know new people. We figure out what they like, what they don't like. We figure out effective ways of being with them and hanging out with them. And that can be a really good initial approach towards a problem. But it takes a little bit of a mindset shift. So the relationship to the goal is important. Why do I want to interview? I won't go into the details of that right now, but maybe towards the end, we can answer that question as well. But it's definitely important to figure out why you are thinking of changing jobs. Why are you, why is that important to you? And be very honest and forthright with yourself about want versus need. Do I need to do this? Do I want to do this? Wanting is an extremely powerful thing. Going towards a goal from a place of fear or worry versus going towards a goal from a place of desire and aspiration, that changes our energy. There's a particular shamelessness that comes with going for what we want. If you are in a job that's not, that you're not you don't feel like I have to absolutely run away from it, but you just want to explore what else is out there. You're hearing of newer opportunities, or you want to learn a new area, or you want to make more money. It is important to have that clear relationship with the goal, to realize that, oh, this is what I want. And when we want something, it's, if we have a setback or if we have a hiccup, there's a certain shamelessness to it because you're like, I didn't get it, but do I still want it? I guess I'll try again. No foundation shakes if you didn't get it the first time because it's a want, it's not a need. But sometimes we don't make that distinction, and it happens on a very subconscious level. The confusion between want and need. Okay. Anything else that's coming up before we ask the next question? What do you think the relationship should be like? What is a healthy relationship to the plan? And I want all of you to offer your ideas. Especially if you feel like I'm feeling very comfortable with myself, the relationship, I'm interested to know what the relationship with the plan is going to be like. Is it like, oh, I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I could do it. I could not do it. Should I do it? Is this the right time to do it? Do I really want to do it? That actually establishes a lot of power in yourself. So it's good to say, what would be an ideal relationship in your opinion? If you could choose any relationship that you could have with the plan, which one, what would you like it to be? We've done the audit of how we feel. We've answered the question of, do we think answering and asking this question matters? We've added an extra question, which is relevant. We will say, don't forget the relationship to the plan as well as the goal. That's a little bit more foundational. It's a little bit deeper. Be able to consistently hit practical goals that I put in the plan and see my growth over time. This is how you want the plan to go, Hasnan. I'm asking what the relationship to the plan should be. How do you want to feel when you imagine yourself going through the plan? If you don't want to feel anxious, if you don't want to feel insecure, or burdened? How do you want to feel? That's going to tell your nervous system that it's not a predator. But we also need to be realistic. We cannot say it'll be a piece of cake. Should feel energizing, as if it will stretch me, but I'm also positive about it. I love that. Energized, accomplished, sense of pride. Pride can be a little bit tricky. I encourage you to feel a lot of sense of pride for just even, making the plan. Pride it can be tricky, making yourself proud. I encourage you to see what you have done today to make yourself proud and really try to absorb that and focus maybe more on aspiration and desire. What do I want? Doing well in the interview process, what's that going to get me? And remembering that. Feels like going for a hike. Yes, the process can feel like going for a hike, which can have both fun aspects and really tiring aspects. A little bit of pain every day to enable growth, much like building muscle. Absolutely. Self-respect more than pride. Self-support, self-championship is my favorite of all those terms. Being your own cheerleader and best friend. So what I want to offer you is, one, be realistic. When you play that movie of you executing your plan, I want it to be realistic. There will be moments of satisfaction. There will be moments of extreme frustration. There will be moments of, why do I need to do this? I'm going to just go ahead and call that moments of anger. There might be moments of helplessness on a particularly difficult day or week where you feel like, I haven't done any preparation for days. It's going to be so hard to restart it. So you want to see them all coming. That's what I mean by realistic, right? And not only having a decent idea of the discomfort that you will feel when you try to execute the plan, but having a friendship with that discomfort. Imagining yourself being frustrated while breathing into your belly. So I'm going to repeat that. Imagining yourself being frustrated sometimes and feeling uncomfortable, feeling burdened, and you're imagining this, but you're breathing very calmly and gently into your diaphragm. Telling your nervous system, this journey is going to have these ups and downs and it belongs. It's not a predator if I feel frustrated. It doesn't mean something is wrong. It just means it will be unpleasant in parts. So, and maintaining a sense of equality. Those are the two things I would say. Befriending the discomfort and having a sense of equality. The plan is not above you. It's more like a family member coming to stay for a bit. There'll be some good moments. There'll be some uncomfortable moments, maybe. But you can see how it's going to go. It belongs in your life. I love social analogies. If there's any social analogy that helps for you, because our brains are really good at grokking that. They'll be like, oh, it's like that. Yeah, I've been doing that way longer than we've been doing math and computer science. So it's going to get that it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but I'll do it. I know how to be uncomfortable. I've been uncomfortable before, and it actually belongs in the journey. And like Suhas mentioned, I think that it's like building a muscle. There will be some, little breakage for the muscle to build up a little bit stronger after the workout. So it's a workout for my brain. Yes. That one, very well put. I want my plan to be a GPS, but not end up becoming the entire experience in this journey. It's going to be a part of my life. So retaining that idea of the rest of you, what matters to you, personally, family, friends, all of that. Remembering that. And if anything, it's a time to really get more connection and hugs from your family and friends and say, this is the time where I really need to remind myself how worthy I am, how much I belong. to remind yourself that I'm not linking my worth and my belonging is not linked to how this plan goes. This plan represents something that I want. And anything else? So we will be realistic. The discomfort belongs. A sense of equality. The plan is not above you. You are not serving the plan. If anything, the plan is serving you. It has to change at your beck and call. For that, if you do have to do a 1 week experiment or something to say, okay, I'll try to do the plan. I'll start my 1 week of preparation, a week or 2 days, and then see how you feel and say, yeah, I don't think my relationship with this plan is where I want it. Because as I sat down to work on it, I think I was holding my breath. I think I was getting really anxious. So that's a really good time to take a step back and say, let me go for a walk and think more about this. Let me breathe into my diaphragm and do your favorite quiet activity, whether it's listening to music while thinking about interviewing and saying, it is safe. Keep coming back to your own center and remind yourself that interview preparation is not a predator. It's something that's safe to do. Might be uncomfortable, but it's safe and you know how to do it. A lot of us have already done it before. So like, this time we will do it better, but it's not something a lot of people are doing it. It can be done. I will get through it one step at a time. Let's try again. Try another day to see if you can see that relationship unfold when you sit down to work on something. If not, then take another break, take another pause, reset, keep resetting. You'll be amazed even if you do this resetting a few times a day, within a week, you will see a big change in how you're relating to things. But you do need to isolate that muscle and lift tiny weights with it. Does that make sense? So we have equality, we have realistic, the discomfort belongs, and a friendship with the discomfort. And in the past, I have called it comfort with discomfort. Is a big part of our foundational relationship to starting a new journey, to asking more of ourselves, okay? I'm thinking if there's anything more that I want to say before we move on. Naveen is asking difference between about and in. Feeling good about ourselves versus feeling good in ourselves. Think about feeling good that you have an apple versus eating the apple and really enjoying the juices going down your throat, chewing it, really assimilating the experience of eating an apple. So when you work on, and we are going to get into that a little bit more when we say how to work on a problem, which was the second most popular question after time management. But when we immerse into something and really experience it, versus standing outside of ourselves and looking in to see if we are doing a good job and saying, yeah, good for you. Yes, I'm glad you're doing this. Versus just immersing in it, sinking into it, like Naveen said. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a window into prioritizing feeling good in yourself for as much of this process of preparation as you can. Say, I'm going to enjoy it. I like problem solving. I'm going to try and have fun with it. Okay. And just trying. Don't force it. Sometimes you'll be too tired to have fun with it. Having fun is such just a word, right? A cliche word. What does it mean to have fun with it? If there's an internal kind of smile on your face, you're doing a little bit dance with the problem, you're curious, you're like, wow, I didn't know you could do this in linear time. How cool is that? That's how you know that, okay, I'm immersed in it. I'm actually, doing a dance. There's some freedom of movement. There's a sense of flow in my body. I'm not clenched. I'm enjoying it. That would be feeling good in yourself. And that's hard to do when, we're anxious or when we're feeling a little bit insecure about how we are doing. It's hard to be in our bodies and really enjoy what we are doing. I think that's how to tackle with laziness and procrastination during the journey. Addressing this will help boost my confidence, I feel. This sounds like constant work. Mukund is saying, yes, it's fun work. Mukund, the work of the mindset is not exactly as annoying as any other constant work. I promise you that. Is it hard to do in the sense it's so unfamiliar to us, so it feels awkward? The work of examining your relationship, but it's actually really fun when you do it, despite being awkward. And you don't need to take out a lot of time to do this work. Say, let me think about my preparation. Let me see where I am at with this thing that I want to do. We are so preoccupied with, I have to do this, I have to do that, that it's almost a break for our core selves to say, oh, thank you. Thank you for asking this nice question. Like, how are you feeling about all of this? But you do have to be prepared for what comes up. And, if you want to have a little tantrum for 5-10 minutes, say, I feel horrible about it. I wish I never had to prepare. Then hear it out. It's okay. It belongs. Then you gently remind yourself of what you want and say, let's see how we can make this work for ourselves. What is one realistic way of thinking about this without feeling clenched and overly anxious? Because that will trigger your survival brain. So that is not going to get you the maximum out of the effort that you put in. So I highly recommend that you try it, Mukund, and everybody else. Expect it to be awkward and unfamiliar, but I can say expect it to be pleasant. You're truly being there with yourself. It's like if you have a child or a nephew or a niece, or, you might think that if you're asking a lot of them, let's say every day at 4 o'clock, they watch an hour of their favorite TV show. And this one day somebody's coming over and you want them to play with their kid or something like that. And you sit down with them a day before and say, hey, listen, tomorrow, this is what's going to unfold. How do you feel about that? They're going to feel very respected. Instead of you saying, this will be good for you, this is what the family needs, this is what, please try not to be upset. Before that, showing a little curiosity and going over them like, hey, that part could be fun. Maybe you'll really like playing with them. And you could play, it's just working with yourself and showing that compassion and that deep respect that, hey, this is coming. We should get on the same page about it. All parts of you should be on the same page about the plan so that you don't have an unexpected tantrum. By unexpected tantrum, I mean, I have designated 1 hour to do this. This happened. I was trying to do some creative writing a few weeks ago, and everything was set, and I have the quiet place. I have my notebook and my pen, and I don't know, next thing I knew, I was preparing a snack, and half an hour later, I watched a little bit of YouTube. I think the first YouTube might have been about writing, 5 tips on creative writing, but later on, just my system was like, we've not done this before. So it's nice to say, oh, okay, looks like I didn't plant the seed for this activity properly. I just sprung it on myself that we're doing this 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. That's okay. That's data. Every single setback is data. Look at the data. What can I learn from it? By that, I don't mean don't feel bummed out when you have a setback. Be bummed out. Be upset about it if that's how you're feeling. Be frustrated. Don't try to shove those feelings. But then look at the data as a scientist. Say, what can I do to set myself up better for this? And that's believing very strongly in yourself, right? That if I didn't do what I had planned to do, there must have been a legitimate reason for it. That's self-belief. It's like, if I didn't do it and I wanted to do it, there must have been a good reason. I just need to get a little, you don't need to unpack what the reason is. We know enough about nervous system now that we can say, okay, I wasn't feeling safe probably to do it. Let me do it in a shorter amount. Let me play some piano music or whatever your favorite gentle music is. Don't play the music that you love so much that it grabs you and you start to really immerse yourself in the music instead. This happens with my musician clients sometimes. They can't listen to music. They love it so much that they start to pay too much attention to the music. I'm not into music that much. So gentle music works great for me. It's like a reminder saying, stay on the task, Geeta. So maybe 1 hour was too much. Maybe try to do a preparation for 10, 15 minutes. And it seems sometimes like treating yourself like a child, but I don't agree with that characterization. I would say more that it's giving yourself a lot of respect. It's recognizing that you're making a big ask. Like your manager saying, we have to deliver this thing not in 2 months, but in 3 weeks. Just do it. That's sometimes what it feels like, some of our demands from ourselves. Instead of having a meeting, the manager tells you this is going to be so hard. How are we going to do this? How are you going to manage it? This is going to take extra time. How can I make it worth your while? I think we should all take a week off after that or 2 days off. Imagine how much better that would feel. That's what you're trying to do to yourself. Say, okay, this person really sees me. They really understand what they're asking of me and what it's going to take. And when we get that deep understanding and respect, something shifts in our energy. And we are able to get more from our effort. We are able to be less burnt out from it. Okay. I think we're ready to move on. 621. We covered some really, it feels like, if it's feeling like you that, oh, we haven't even moved into how to prepare. Trust me, there's a reason I'm devoting so much time to talking about this. This is extremely important, this foundation, before you get into the specifics of an interview plan. The specifics are important, but they are not more important than the mindset and then your relationship to the plan. Okay, let's go over the right way to work on questions. So you have a good set of questions. What is the right way to work on them? Okay, next page. What is the right way to work on questions? I have brought you, I'll present to you something and then let's discuss it. I want to see how this sits with all of you. So here's what I am proposing. So let's say you pick a question. I have said this before, but I will remind all of us here, go breadth first. So let's say you have 25 questions and you're devoting 1 hour a day. So maybe you work on one question a day. The first question is from sorting on Monday, Tuesday it's trees, Wednesday it's graphs. So you're kind of jumping from topic to topic a little bit. Initially, you might have to give 2 days to the same question before you feel satisfied with your learning of it, right? That's going to depend on individual circumstances, how well you know the topic, how much time you have, but what to do in that 1 hour. So here's what I'm proposing. So I'll try to draw this flow chart and then you guys tell me what you think about it. So first, of course, is step 0, which is say hello to the problem. This is where you really want to focus on your breathing and not getting tense about the fight that you think is about to ensue between you and the problem. So this is the step where you establish friendship. My favorite analogy for this, which many of you have heard me say before, and some of you have told me that you remember it every time you work on a problem, is that the problem is like a small puppy that has wandered onto your table. And you just say hi to it, get down to its level, be nice, be gentle, try to get to know it a little bit with a lot of gentle curiosity, very gentle friendship. So, hand solve a few examples is my favorite way to do this. The moment I get a question, I recommend you involve your body right away, the hand and the eyes to start writing. So your familiar patterns don't take over very quickly. The familiar patterns of, interview preparation, or if we have, they tend to look like the following. Will I know this? How about hashing? How about sorting? Should I use trees? You're like, do I know this? Am I going to be good at this? Now you're just throwing things at it, right? Throwing random things at it. And that can look like not a lot of progress at the end of 10 minutes. because we were mostly being frantic. We're not actually being with the problem. That's what a frantic defense offense combination looks like. You want to calm down and just say hello to the problem. And my favorite techniques for that is very slowly and very neatly say hello to the problem by picking a few examples and hand solving them. So let's say your input is a binary tree and you're looking for a minima node in that tree. A minima node is a node where its value is less than its parent as well as its children, if it has children. It's a binary tree, not a binary search tree, right? So just as an example, if that's the problem, local minima, sometimes the brain goes trees, I could do it breadth first, this, that. That's where your anxiety, like I need to, like my intelligence needs to crush this problem right now. It needs to produce some good idea with which I will crush this problem and conquer it. So you want to, right off the bat, if that tends to happen with you, then you want to right off the bat counter it. It might not happen with every problem. With some problems, we have a different kind of comfort. Some of us love recursion. With recursion, we're like, all right, let's take a look at this. With graph, we might be like, oh, is this DFS? How do I do this? So be watchful of what your mindset is at that point. Slow down, very slowly, very neatly, hand solve a few examples. Make a few trees, give them some random values, circle the minimum. Even doing that for 5 minutes, you already would have established a friendship with the problem. You would have observed a few things about this problem. There can be many minimas. There can be one minima, there can be multiple minimas, they can be on either side of the root. There can be a minima on the right side, there can be a minima on the left side. You might have all of these observations without having a solution. So this could be 5 to 10 minutes. Over time, 5 minutes will be, you'll be surprised at how much you can do in 5 minutes. But somewhere in there, if you have 1 hour to devote to this problem, maybe 5 minutes. So that's step 0, right? Step 1 is to work on it on your own. So now you do, let's call it brute force plus pseudocode. If it's a little bit tricky, sometimes the pseudocode is very simple, sometimes it's a little bit tricky. If it's really simple, a linear scan over something, then don't need to write pseudocode. And if applicable, you write the pseudocode for the brute force, and then a few ideas of how you might for performance improvement, right? So that's your stage number 2. Brute force, pseudocode, few ideas for performance improvement. Give yourself, again, 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how much time you have to do this stage. Say, okay, I'm gonna, I can do this in brute force exponential or 2 nested loops or something like that. And then say, how would I improve it? Maybe this is where you can throw a few darts at it. I might try tries. I might try a linear scan. I might try depth for search, see how that goes. Right? Maybe I'll do a depth for search over the binary tree. And as I'm searching, I keep looking for the local minima. And when I find it, I'm done. A depth for search on a binary tree is just a way to do a scan over the tree. Right? So you might do that. So that's step 1. Now, the next step is you work on the problem on your own, right? This is where step 2A, let's call it. Try to solve on your own. Step 2B is look up the solution. Step 2C is Look up the solution briefly. That's step 2B. And step 2C is look up the solution entirely. Is it clear to people what the difference between the two is? Look up the solution briefly is like, dynamic programming. Okay. Now I'm going to try it. Now that I have that hint. So look up the solution briefly is like giving yourself a hint. Look up the solution entirely is to say, I'm not even going to try to solve it myself. So trying to solve it on your own is an optional step. By optional, I mean you can skip it sometimes. I would actually change that to say you can skip it many times. And this surprises people when I recommend this, but I believe in it wholesale. You do not need to solve every problem on your own. Some of these problems were publishable results when they were solved. Do not let LeetCode and Geeks for Geeks get in your head. Okay? So let's say, now let's go back to that first 2 weeks of your preparation. Monday, you picked up a sorting problem. Look at your day. Monday, are you working in the morning on a problem? Do you tend to like sorting? Okay, then this time maybe you do try to solve it on your own, right? You give yourself 15 minutes to come up with the optimal solution on your own. If it's evening, you're already really tired, 2C. Look up the solution entirely. Don't try to come up with anything on your own. Say hello to the problem, do the brute force, go to 2C. Don't burden yourself. Don't get in the way of your own learning. Remember, we are trying to get the most out of the effort we put in. We cannot do that without taking into account how we are feeling in that moment as when we are putting in the effort. So you don't want to create a tussle with yourself. So this is where you have a plan, you have your problems, but you have built some flexibility that shows a lot of respect for how unpredictable your days can be. So some days you look up the solution briefly, then go at it. Some days you look it up entirely. Like today, I'm just learning this solution. I don't have to come up with anything like this ever in my life. Convince yourself and relax into it and just learn the solution. That way you calm down that anxiety completely. Like, will I be able to come up with it? Will I be able to? This constantly runs into our head when we do LeetCode. How will I come up with this? Initially, do not worry about. Actually, I would say don't ever worry about it. If your problem set is good, and if you're going to learn it with good immersion, some curiosity, pockets of joy, your brain is going to do the right thing. You have to have that faith. And of course, they can always spring a problem on you that stumps you. Doesn't matter how many algorithms you know. I'm sure we could pick an algorithms professor, give them a problem, they will not be able to solve it within the interview window because they haven't been doing competitive programming or LeetCoding. That can always happen. Right? So get yourself off the hook, and we'll talk about how to define a successful interview in a minute. So that is 2C. And then 3, which is extremely important. Code it up. Regardless of whether you try to solve it on your own and then looked the solution briefly and then looked up the solution entirely. Maybe you did 2A, 2B, 2C. Maybe you did 2A to 2C, some combination of that step 2. But 3 is not optional. If you do not have time and you are tired, pick an easy problem so you can do step 3. Look up the solution entirely, code it up, pass all the test cases. And then I put it as a different step, step number 4, where I say coding fluency. This is the one that people underestimate and ignore. We are so overcome with strengthening our algorithm design muscles that we forget to strengthen our coding fluency muscle. The coding fluency muscle is that you have, and this is extremely important, the coding fluency muscle is you understand the algorithm. You can describe the algorithm in English. You have roughly the pseudocode of the algorithm. When you get to that stage, how quickly can you translate that into working code? That muscle has to be practiced continuously. That muscle gets stronger every day. You might work on 100 algorithms problems and still run into a problem that really stumps you. But if you are doing your coding fluency practice really, really well with every problem that you work on, I almost guarantee you will not be stumped on coding it. You will get so good at it. The skill of turning pseudocode or in English description into working code that passes all test cases, where you understand every line of the code, where you understand what every variable is doing, that skill guaranteed gets better. Every week your coding fluency will get better if you're focusing on it on the right way. And in an interview, it looks really good. If you maybe needed 2 hints, but you very quickly translated it once you and your interviewer agree on the algorithm, and they can tell how crisp and efficient your coding is, they might forget that you needed the hints. That's how good it looks. On the flip side, when we struggle too much with producing working code of something that we just clearly communicated to our interviewer, it makes them nervous about our programming skills. It confuses the interviewer. Like, wait, does this person not code enough? Which is not true, because we code enough, but we don't code algorithms from LeetCode enough. It's a slightly different skill set. But the good news is if you practice it every day, it will get better. 100%. So do not ignore it. If you show me a piece of code and you say that, Geeta, this code works correctly, and it finds, and if there is somewhere in the code you have said, if I is less than K, I will ask you, what will happen if I change that I less than K to I less than equal to K? If you cannot answer that question, then you have written code that you don't fully understand the mechanics of. So in the interest of coding fluency, I would even say that in the beginning, just look up solutions and learn how to code them fast. And see if you can notice within 1 week, does that skill get better? It will also calm down your anxiety of how will I come up with things, because you're not trying to come up with anything. Pick one problem from every topic and code it. Go over the code again. Everywhere you see an if loop, and ask yourself, what will happen if I change it? What will happen if I change the less than to greater than? So many times we do binary search type algorithms and you will have this computation of mid. Mid equals start plus n minus start by 2. And then you are recursing on either mid or mid plus 1. So many ways you can test your own coding fluency. Thinking of quick sort, partitioning. So many less than equal tos that change how things proceed. So learning those nuances of loops and end conditions. So the checklist there would be be able to describe the intention behind variables and lines of code. For each line of code, for each variable, you should be able to describe very clearly what this variable is supposed to hold. Okay? And then play with smaller changes and see if you can predict what's going to happen. and run it and see if that's what you thought was going to happen happens or not. And then over time, you'll just get good at it. Okay. So that is how I want you to work on problems. Now, sometimes people ask that, should I worry about different patterns? There are some interview preparation boot camps that might try to teach you different patterns. I'm not against it. I'm not for it. I feel like learning the different patterns of how code looks like and how problems should be solved, it's overfitting. Your brain is extremely powerful. If you focus on your mindset and learn the problems with good immersion, your brain can do much better patterns. Forcing those patterns sometimes can be like, doing command line processing over an SQL database. Your brain can do patterns like crazy. So you don't want to do your own patterns on top of that unless it's something that you really enjoy. And then you go for it because joy comes first. If it's something that you feel excited with, and you're like, oh, I really love to determine patterns of things, then that's the right fit for you. Because that's improving your relationship to the plan. And that's gold for us, right? That's the gold standard. So what if I move a particular if loop, check to the top? What if I, do the less than to less than equal to? If you are still not sure exactly what I mean by it, get in touch with me. I'll try to send you example ways to test your coding fluency. I think I have some notes on it from way back, so I'll try to dig them out. But I highly, highly recommend it, right? That I'm just trying to think. We covered the joy of interviewing. I think that's all I want to say on the right way to work on a problem. Got it, Naveen. I will remind me for the checklist I'll pick up like quicksort partitioning and send the code to you guys and my follow-up questions of how I test coding fluency for myself when I code something up. And over time, you'll be like, oh, now I really know this code. But we can also do a follow-up session where we can solve a nice algorithms problem and test our own coding fluency as we solve it. Okay, what is the next question? Let me go. Question number 3 was, I think we covered it. Am I working on the right questions? I think I covered it. Maybe not the best, most satisfying coverage, but I think that's not worth going into right now. While it's important to have a good set of questions at this point, interviewing, so many people have created so many sets. The only thing I would say is pick one and stick with it. And if you don't have a single set to start with, get in touch with me. I will, send some resources that I've gotten from people who are preparing for interviews and have benefited from a particular set. The next one was interviewing anxiety. So now we're moving into a little bit into what happens in the interview. Again, the mindset is very important. Relationship to the goal is important. The biggest thing to remember there would be that when I'm interviewing, my goal is not to impress the interviewer. Don't be too connected to their response to you. That can really start to dig into our sense of self-worth and belonging, and we don't want that. But if it happens, it happens. You can't force your limbic system to do things. Try it. So for that, I do recommend mock interviews. One of you asked that in your survey or mentioned that in your survey. Should I do mock interviews? Yes, mock interviews are really good to get those nerves out. Bharat, do you have any videos you can share where you have covered like 10 important questions? That's a good question, Bharat. I have graph algorithms. I have an arrays problem video, and I am thinking of making one video from every topic. So that could be a starter set where you can learn one problem really well with the code and everything. And then you can apply that. So I'm working, it's on my list of things to do. And I will try to do that. That's all I would say about interview anxiety. Hints, don't even worry about it. Focus on defining, let's do that right now very quickly. How would you define a successful interview from your point of view? Like, what do you have to do to get a huge, like both thumbs up from yourself? What has to happen in an interview where you would turn around and say, I'm really glad. I think that I crushed it. Make that checklist. Okay. What's a good interview experience? Performance. Let's not shy away from that word. Okay. If you don't have your own definition of what is a good interview performance, then anything that doesn't go well is going to look bad. Does that make sense? If we don't define good, anything can be bad. Bad can come from anywhere. It's like, oh, that person, the interviewer seemed a little bit rude. This is not going well. They can be rude. You know, maybe they're just rude in general, or they're having a particularly rude day. I don't know, but it can happen. Let's fix my camera a little bit. What is a good interview experience for you guys? What do you guys think? So Hasnan, I would say, be careful. You don't want to show your command of anything. You want to be a good software engineer in the interview. You want to be the engineer that you would want to work with. And in that process, if you end up showing the command of this or that, that's fine. Because otherwise we can worry about what the other person is thinking. And then we can get hung up on, am I doing well? Do you like me? Especially in Zoom interviews, I ask people to pay attention to what happens to even their posture. People will start off with their back to the chair, but as the interview proceeds, sometimes we leave the chair and it's almost our body saying, hey, do you like me? Am I doing good? Do you like me? Please like me. I'm not saying everybody does that. I certainly did it when I was interviewing, pretty sure. And I can still do it in certain conversations where I feel like I'm kind of, it starts off as I'm really excited for this new connection I'm making, this professional connection. I hope it goes well. And that eagerness can sometimes turn it into, I need it to go well. If we're not careful, I want it to go well turns into I need it to go well. It has to go well. This is where we're altering the relationship now. The relationship I have with this endeavor is changing when I go from want to need. So it's good to pay attention and keep coming back to it. I want it to go well. Maybe it will go well. I'll try to have a good time. I will take the problem that I cannot control. The interviewer controls the problem. The interviewer controls their mood, their tone, their energy. What can I control? I can use this problem to demonstrate and come alive as an engineer. I can be an engineer with only this problem as my vehicle. I can't choose my vehicle. If someone were to ask me, Geeta, we want to see the kind of problem solver you are, we would say, hey, can you give me a graph problem? Because I love those. But if they give me a strings problem, which I have a bit of a hang up against, nothing, I don't know, I just always have a certain inertia. When people say those KMP problems, my mood drops a little bit. I don't know why. But that was one part of algorithms that I never got to establish a deeper friendship with. But, you know, I don't get to choose that. I might get a strings problem. But given that the parameters that I cannot control, accept them, and then say, given these parameters, how can I be truly expressed? How can I authentically express myself, represent myself as an engineer? Think clearly, communicate clearly, do build alignment with your interviewer. You will be working on teams. So if you're going off on a tangent pausing and asking them, hey, should I go on this tangent? I feel like this could lead to a really good approach, but I definitely want to make sure that we're on the same page about it. Right? So build that alignment, keep that communication going without being too hung up on their response to you, their approval of you, trying to unlink that I don't need this person's approval. I just need to be myself. And I want to make sure that I can be in my thinking brain as much as possible. So for that, mock interviews can be really helpful because you can see how your limbic brain kind of comes in the way, or maybe not. Maybe you've interviewed before and you're going through a particular phase of your life where you're feeling like, I understand. And the current professional climate has done that to a lot of us, that, okay, you know what? It's just work. I'm not so hung up on my self-worth anymore. I used to be, but somehow the professional climate has sped up that process, which is in isolation a good thing. That people are like, you know what, it's just work. It doesn't define my worth. Of course, it doesn't define my worth, because we've seen, people who worked so long and who were so valuable, supposedly, just let go. So sometimes, that might have facilitated it for you, in which case this is not a big deal for you. But if that hasn't happened, that you haven't had the opportunity to develop that skill, then you might have to think about that a little bit. So now, instead of imagining yourself doing the plan, now you imagine yourself doing the interview and the same things. A sense of equality with the interviewer, being realistic. I might know the answer, I might not know the answer. If you don't know the answer, you have an even better opportunity to demonstrate who you are, don't you think? Then they really get to find out. So if you think about that, you could develop that shift in your mindset. That if I don't know the answer, then the good interviewer will really get to see the problem solver that I am, because they get to see me work on something that I don't know how to do. Then you really find out you can get excited about that. It's a possibility. You can be like, all right, this person will really get to see who I am, because they'll get to see me be uncomfortable. They'll get to see me struggle. And I know how to struggle well, because I understand the struggle belongs. It will belong even when I'm at the job, right? So that's what I would say about preparation for when you're in the interview. And goes without saying, but I will mention it, that time yourself when practicing. I should have mentioned that in this checklist. We'll almost say, instead of this 0, 1, 2C, you can't see the side, I'll type it down here. Give yourself 30 minutes to do the entire problem, just like as you were in an interview. So do an interview replay. So sometimes solve the problems the way we talked about it, but after the first few weeks of preparation, every fourth problem, say, I'm going to pretend that this has just been asked of me in an interview. I'm going to start the clock and see how far I get in 30 minutes or 25. So getting those nerves out of your system from the very beginning. I can't believe that I forgot to mention that. But that's very important. So you want to keep going back and forth, right? Sometimes looking up the solution, sometimes not, but sometimes just doing a self-mock interview and say, here's the question, go. And if, by the way, you struggled a lot with a particular problem, flag it so you can go back to it. You can go back to it in a week. On a particular day that you're tired, that might be a good day to redo a problem that you struggled a lot with, especially with coding fluency. If you struggle to pass all the test cases, if you felt like you don't truly understand what every line of code is doing, then flag it so you can go back to it. Behavioral questions, we didn't get to cover too much. I didn't think we would get to that, but we do have a few minutes. Unless you guys have any other questions, we can talk a little bit about behavioral interview preparation. What I recommend for behavioral interviews is have a good idea of what your strengths and values are. If you have not worked on writing down your strengths and values, get in touch with me. I can send you a one-pager that I have on it called Professional Identity Discovery. I will be happy to share that with you. You can go over that one-pager and start to outline some of your strengths and values. It will not take very long. Once you know what some of your professional strengths and values, then you can do your behavioral preparation. Pick one of the commonly asked behavioral questions, such as describe one time where you had a conflict with your teammates and how you resolved it, for example. And you have a story, right, that you want to share in response to that question. Now I would say go back and clearly write the different beats of that story. Don't write the story in a paragraph. Write it in a bulleted list. And highlight the strengths and values of yours that are playing a role in this story. If you don't know any strengths or values, or you don't see them in a very clear way, that is one of those answers where the interviewer won't have a problem with your answer, but they wouldn't be thrilled with it either. And sometimes they themselves wouldn't know why. They will feel like, yeah, it was okay. I didn't feel great about it. I didn't feel a really I didn't get a clear sense of who this person is, but there was nothing wrong with the answer. The answers were okay. So here, this is where we think, why are they asking these behavioral questions? They're trying to get a sense of what you are like if you were to join their team. That's what they're trying to get at. So be aware of that and make sure that every story highlights at least one out of your strengths and values, hopefully both, one or two strengths or one or two values. And you can talk about it, that I love this. And, when I look back on this conflict, I feel good because I grew. The one strength that I always wanted to grow, but I also got to be, do a lot of communication. That's one of my already existing strengths. And I do value building alignment, and I got to build alignment. So when I look back on it, it actually was an important experience for me, because it not only played to the strengths I have, it played to the strengths I wanted to have, and it allowed me to live one of my values, which is building alignment or mentoring people or whatever that story highlights. So you can end that story by specifically talking about your strengths and values. And that's when the interviewer will get a really good sense of who you are. And this is very authentic. It just takes a little bit of time to outline those. So that's what I recommend to people. Highlight strengths with the green highlighter, values with the pink highlighter. Say, okay, this is a good answer to this question because this authentically represents some key aspects of the professional that I am, which is why they're asking this question. And this way you can also unlink from wanting to impress the interviewer. Now, a good behavioral interview for you is one where you were authentically represented. The stories were true. They were communicated clearly and concisely. And they reflected your authentic strengths and values. That's a good behavioral answer. So if you take that checklist, then that can be a good blueprint for your behavioral interview preparation, I hope. And that's it. We will stop the recording, and then we can, are you sure you want to, sorry.